It's Wednesday morning in Switzerland, it's evening in Australia, and it's Space Café Australia time. Our new format, Space Café Australia with Melanie Jane Ward and her guest, will begin soon. As always, we appreciate your participation and your ongoing feedback. I'm Thorsten Kriening, publisher of SpaceWatch.Global, and we are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. With Melanie, we started our operations now also in Australia and New Zealand. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and our daily newsletters, and our Space Café podcasts. We also keep our fan shop open online for you, where you can support us actively and become a space watcher. That one. Edition 1 has cool mugs, masks, awesome t-shirts, brand new reflecting jackets and backpacks, and more cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love. Your support is needed to keep our work alive. For you, of course. If you have missed any of the previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section and on YouTube. We will host our Space Café Australia live on a regular basis. And with that, my job is done, and I'd like to hand over to you, I would like to hand over you to your host in Adelaide today, Melanie. Over to you, and toi toi toi, good luck, and I know you guys will be brilliant. Over.
Thank you. Before we get started tonight, here at Space Café Australia, we will share the stories of people from across Australia to document their stories and roles in Australian space. First, however, it is important to recognize the history and sovereignty of Indigenous peoples across Australia. SpaceWatch.Global would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Indigenous and First Nations people here today and listening later. I am joining you from the lands of the Kaurna people, and Jackie is joining us from the lands of the Durick people. Thank you for joining us tonight at Space Café Australia from wherever you are in the world. We aim to share with you the stories from Australian space. My name is Melanie Jane Ward, your host tonight. I'm an Australian science communicator who was raised in the United States. You can follow me at Melanie J. Ward on Twitter, where I share photos of my adorable cat and updates about some of the amazing events I've had the privilege to coordinate or attend. In 2015, I relocated back to South Australia and later was introduced into the Australian space community by volunteering with the Australian Youth Aerospace Association, the AYAA. Now I'm with initiatives like the AIAA, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Adelaide chapter, to coordinate their lecture series in aerospace. And I also work with SpaceWatch.Global to arrange Space Café Australia. Outside of my volunteerism, I also study a Bachelor of Science Computer Science at Flinders University and work for SpaceWatch.Global as their correspondent for New Zealand and Australia. When launching the Australian Space Café, we had to consider what guest to choose. While Australia appears to be early in our space history, our country has a rich and lengthy heritage in space. There is no shortage of stories to feature from Australian space. However, we settled on highlighting STEM outreach. For many, STEM outreach is how we started our learning journey that inspired us to take the paths we are currently on in space. We were quite fortunate to arrange for our first episode a woman who is not only a specialist in STEM outreach, but whose work in STEM initiatives has reached students across Australia and has inspired so many students to start their own journeys. I greatly admire her work, and I'm excited to introduce Jackie Carpenter to Space Café Australia. Jackie has a diverse and long-standing background in education with first-hand experience working with school children. She was a school teacher for 25 years and later worked in the Department of Education analyzing the New South Wales school curriculum on how it corresponds with student learning. Jackie's passion for STEM is embedded into the broader goals of One Giant Leap Australia, preparing young Australians for the opportunities of the future, enhancing teacher skills for the more capable students of tomorrow, and doing what is needed to ensure there are new jobs. Once more, I welcome Jackie to the show.
I'd like to thank SpaceWatch.Global, and I'm really honoured to be the first person to present in Space Café Australia region. And I'm looking forward to tonight and lots of questions being asked. And generally just really excited that this is happening in Australia. So Melanie, thank you so much.
And thank you once again for joining us. I thought as we may as well go from chronological order in this first episode, speaking about a lot of firsts. Where did you get your start in space? What was your first experience with the STEM outreach program?
Well, way back in 2007, I received I was awarded a scholarship from the Honeywell Educators at the Space Academy program and went on an incredible journey over to Space Camp USA. I was someone who didn't have a gap year or a passport, so I was so excited to be selected to go and participate in this incredible program in Space Camp. So I got to know 268 teachers from around the world, many of whom I'm still friends with all these years later. So really going into Space Camp was the thing that really turned my teaching on its head. So all those years, 2007, and I've been back 14 times since. So I feel like it's like a second home to me. That started me on my STEM outreach. So I came back from that with rockets under my arm, Mars rover packages, all these things, so excited to share with my then year 4 class. And so that then expanded to other classes, other grades, other schools, presenting at the powerhouse, doing a whole lot of stuff. So that was really the ignition point for me.
And is this also the fact that you enjoyed this so much? Do you feel like this helped you get into teaching? Because why teaching of all the careers you could have gone into?
I think I was born to teach. I can remember teaching my grandfather's cockatoo and putting the cat in a pram and taking it to school and things like that. So I believe that it's been in me since the time I was born. But then when I had that incredible experience in Space Camp, I felt like I could make a difference, an even bigger difference than before, because if we can provide these different opportunities, maybe a student might turn around and go, yeah, I can be that. So education is something that I think you're always an educator. I don't think you ever move away from that. And I think it's a certain way that you look at the world. So we're all educators in some way. It's just sometimes you don't even recognise that you are. So just sharing ideas with people, things like that, you're an educator. So I think we all are in some way.
That's a great way to look at it. And I think as well, emphasizing that there was that, it all sort of harkened back to the inspiration of things that happened earlier on in life. I mean, I still remember my first visit to the Challenger Space Camp where Sally Ride came in and she chatted with us as being the first American woman in space, and just in general spoke to us as from scientists to young scientists. And those early experiences are just so valuable, and they just bring with you throughout your life. So I think that's really cool.
And giving away my age a little bit, I remember lying on our dirt road and looking up at the moon, because at that time, Man on the Moon and Neil Armstrong, we didn't have a television, so we had to go to the people over the road's house. And so we laid down on the road. I remember looking up and thinking, it's not made of cheese, there's people up there. So having a mum who actively encouraged mud pie baking and she was quite terrified of the frogs we used to collect out of the local creek. But apart from that, having parents who actively encourage that, I think it broadens your horizons and makes you look at different opportunities in different ways. So yeah, it is. It's all about the opportunities and it doesn't have to be big money opportunities. Like you say, it's the connecting of people and the connecting of networks. Often it's just that conversation you can be having over a coffee or sitting in McDonald's with some students having an ice cream. It can just be that moment, the switch turns, and suddenly people are on that trajectory, and it's wonderful to be part of it.
Yeah, I think I can definitely agree. It's great to be a part of it, and I think that's why as well the introduction into the Australian space industry for me really was the Australian Youth Aerospace Association, as it was essentially telling uni students, let's go and be STEM outreach, let's go out and do these things. And I think that appealed to me a lot more than just going off and doing anything else, really, because you get to share things with people. Students were always so excited to hear from the big kids, and it's definitely something worthwhile. And I honestly think working with STEM outreach is amazing. But what led you to leave teaching to start a STEM outreach initiative of your own, One Giant Leap Australia?
Well, 2007, when I went to space camp and came back, when I left there, I thought, why don't we have one as our own country? And then juggling too many things, classroom, after hours, weekends, things, a lot of opportunities. And then when I was working in the head office of the education department, looking at it and going, there's so many things we can offer. And it was a really big, giant leap for me to leave the comfort of a paid job, having a salary every fortnight, knowing that money was coming in, to go from that income to zero. So I know the first year of One Giant Leap, the income was zero. Then the next year was $12,000. I was so proud that I actually, 12,000, like, I know it sounds silly, but that showed me that my thoughts were correct, that there was that I could probably make a small living out of it, but if I kept going, maybe I could do this. And this is what gets me out of bed every day. It's what excites me. It's great to be able to do something that you really love, but it's a big quantum leap. And any startup or anyone with an idea, it's really scary. It's really, really scary, especially at an age that I did that. Often people say that you shouldn't do that you should just stick with that because you've got X number of years till retirement. But how boring would life be if everyone did that? So I leapt into it. It was funny, my accountant told me that no one would understand what One Giant Leap was, that the name of the company wouldn't catch on. I don't have that accountant anymore. But anyway, so I started One Giant Leap just with an idea around doing a bit of outreach, doing one trip a year only to Space Camp because I really didn't want people to think I was just a tour company. So I made sure it was just that one trip a year. And over the time when I was teaching and taking my school to Space Camp, plenty of people would say, can you take my child? Or as an adult, go, how can I go? I really want to go. So regulations and rules are not meant, especially laws and rules aren't meant to be broken, but they are made to be bent a bit. So, sorry, Stephen. But anyway, so I decided what I wanted to do was just gather up all the interested people and off we go on an adventure together. That's all I wanted to do because it was so life-changing for me that I wanted other people to feel that way. And it's not about being in the white suit and doing a spacewalk. It's not that at all. It's about finding yourself in amongst all the different activities that we'd organise. So the trip is never the same every year, and we just do this one trip. So we take everybody, and everyone wants to be there. So there's no one sitting there going, oh, I want to go direct factory outlet shopping. Everyone's hanging out to see the next space thing. So the atmosphere is quite different. And we take grandparents, we take just space people, people who are interested, people who are right into it. And it's funny because everyone just goes together. And I say to the adults, you do realise there's going to be a large number of children. So if you're crazy enough to come away with me and 80 children, well, that's okay with me. But I try to make sure that they understand that it's for everybody. And space is for everybody, and it doesn't matter what age. And that's the message, that's the total message is let's just try these things. And so that's how all of that has come about.
I think you made a lot of great points. I'd like to also highlight the fact that, 12,000, you're right, that does seem like a bit small, but everyone, especially in the space industry, knows at the moment that we all had to start small, and now there's an agency that's been established. So it's kind of everything in life starts out small and grows into something amazing, and it's quite clear that you've been able to build this amazing industry essentially to help foster the future learners. And I feel like then that actually goes really well to talking about one of the projects that you started with One Giant Leap Australia. What started the project that's now working with schools to send the wattle and basil seed to the space station? Are you training students to be the next generation of space farmers?
Oh, hopefully they're better at, like, everyone knows my cooking skills are pathetic. I have a Facebook page that's 50 Shades of Charcoal. So my gardening skills aren't much better than my cooking skills. So hopefully the new generation of space farmers will be far better than me, because I think if I had to live on what was growing in my backyard, I'd starve to death. So the wattle and the basil all spun out of a project. We're so grateful to the support we've received from the Australian Space Agency. First of all, they asked us, would we be the national coordinators of the Kibo Robot Programming Challenge? So we signed up for that. And that's with JAXA and a pile of other space agencies together in the Asia Pacific. And in a discussion one time online, JAXA said, Australia, do you want to send seeds to space? And I said yes, without even thinking about what seeds, what the program would be. And so from that, we were asked what seeds would we like to send. And it's part of the whole program is with the Asia Herbs in Space. there's a Basel experiment that's going to be done on the space station by Japan on I think it's the 11th of February to the 9th of March. And there was some spare room on that experiment. So they offered to everybody, would you like to send seeds? So New Zealand has sent seeds, other countries have sent seeds. So we decided that we would send wattle seeds. And the funny thing about that was we thought wattle seeds, they're the national floral emblem. What a cool thing to do. And then later on, after we'd made that decision, we found out that the patron of our company, Greg Chamitoff, had taken wattle seeds to the space station in 2008 in his luggage. So it's a classic because he's the patron of our company. So I feel really happy that we're moving along on the experiment that Greg started back in 2008. So we've been on the hunt to find those space wattle, but they're all not around anymore. So we're hoping that won't happen to this lot. So the space wattle, there's a few thousand seeds up there on the space station right now, went up on SpaceX 21. And those wattle seeds, when they return, we've written a program, and that program, there'll be about 400 locations growing the space wattle in Australia. So we're going to make sure we have a map so we know where every single one is so we can track them on as a 2-year experiment. And so we still have some spots, if there's anyone from Australia listening, we still have some spots for schools or scout groups or Girl Guide groups or air cadets or AYAA, AIAA, anyone can apply. They just need to email me. So if they go to our website, and all those details obviously will be shared, that there'll be an opportunity for more people to grow the space wattle. So that was the space wattle. So I called it Wattle Happened to the Wattle. That came to me in the middle of the night as a good idea. And so everyone's talking about that. So it's easily searchable online. There's been a lot of press releases go out. The schools are excited. We have one school of 7 students who are going to grow the space wattle, and they want to grow it as a memory to their gardener who passed away. So they want to make a memorial to their general assistant from their school. And then there's Kwama School, where their orchard burnt down in the bushfires. So everyone's talking about Kibo meaning hope. So the kids are researching Kibo. They're researching our relationship with Japan. They're trying to learn Japanese. We've been on national Japanese news. Because of Hayabusa 2, there's been this whole link up. So it's gone from this little idea into this pretty major project of my house is kind of getting overrun with little seedling greenhouses. So, and then from that, the Basel experiment is a ground experiment so that we can share data with the Japanese scientists and the Malaysian scientists. So the kids grow the basil here, and then it's like a big citizen science project, and then we get to share the information from them growing it on the space station. So it's really exciting, and it seems really simple, but it's quite complicated. Schools can take it as being just a small experiment into something major. Year 11 and Year 12 students can take it and do a totally huge depth study on it, and maybe we will be creating space farmers from Australia. Who knows? Here's hoping.
So it sounds like not only has this created such a widespread thing among Australian schools, but it's also given them their first exposure to working internationally and seeing what benefits can come from collaborating with our international neighbors, particularly around here in the Asia Pacific region. So it's, I think,
and it's also,
but
it's also reinforcing real world problems and working with scientists on proper science and space experiments and sharing that proper scientific data. how to set up an experiment properly, what data to collect, and then to talk to each other. So I'm hoping that the refugee group in Darwin gets to talk to the group in Alice Springs, and then gets to talk to the little kids in outback New South Wales. So all the locations are on a Google map, so I'm going to get everyone to choose another school to talk to. And so, you know, and then what I want to do is then link that up globally. So there's really, truly, the project can be as big as what we want it to be. So if anyone's listening who's got any crazy ideas, I'm up for crazy ideas. I'm a woman of action. I normally take an idea and run with it. So if anyone is listening who wants to join in on the fun, or some other ideas that we haven't thought of, I'm really happy for if you contact me and let's explore, you know.
And I'd like to remind everyone as well, you can find Jackie on many social media platforms, One Giant Leap Australia and the One Giant Leap Australia Foundation. She has a website up as well, so don't forget to keep an eye out for that. I thought as well that, so the work that you do in your STEM initiatives, actually, sorry, a question just came in that I think would be perfect there. So in this online era, essentially, you're putting together this project. What approaches are the most productive for making sure that the STEM content makes it to the forefront and maintains attention without compromising quality?
Yeah, I'm very careful about that. The STEM things that we do, a lot of it has been pre-COVID, coming together as groups, visiting schools, having community forums and things like that. So we have run, we had just recently Alice Gorman and Sally Tyndall and a few others on a Women in Space online forum at night. So the whole aim of, especially the Wattle and the Basil, we will send all the materials to the schools, and then we'll have a website and an app, so they have a choice of which way to upload the data. But then we'll do a lot of online teleconferencing, but we'll repeat it a few times. So, for example, we'll have Greg Chamitoff talk to schools, but it might not suit that school at that time. So we'll run a night one, we'll run a couple of daytime ones, so that if they miss it that time, they get to have that live interaction at another time. So part of what we do, we run free monthly teleconferencing. So we've had NASA JPL scientists and engineers. We've had Orion engineers from NASA. So we run those every month. So we're quite proficient at doing large scale things where people feel it's quite intimate, but we keep the numbers down of the enrolment so that that way the kids get to ask that question. There's that question and answer time in real time. So, and we make sure it's only schools, so we protect the students because we know it's just schools registered. So we have all these methods and ways of doing it, but the practical side has to happen. We can't talk about STEM and then tell everyone we can do it online without having anything practical happening. It flies in the face of the whole core of what STEM and STEM outreach is about. So kits will be sent out, materials will be sent out, education programs have been written, and then that whole support network of just give me a call, you need something, what do you need? Every school's different, every group's different. So anyone who knows me knows they can just pick up the phone and go, this isn't working for me, okay, how can we make it work? We have to keep that personal touch in there because that personal, emotional attachment is pretty cool when you're doing education.
Yeah, and I think as well, just it's good that we sort of realize that even though we can bring things online, there's still more that goes into it. I mean, even especially with putting together such a widespread project, making sure students stay engaged. So it's really interesting to hear that side of things. Also as well, I've heard you talking a bit about curriculums and how you've essentially designed there. You've mentioned before to me about the diversifying curriculums when working with students of different backgrounds. Why do you feel this is important when you're working in STEM outreach initiatives?
I taught in India in a poor village for 8 weeks. I had 68 Year 3 students who'd never done group work before, and I took them out in their little tiny playground and we made sundials. So instead of just copying out of a textbook, I actually got plasticine, a stick and a bit of paper, and every hour they went out and they drew the line where the sundial was, the shadow. And they were just fascinated. They even drew around the outline of the stick. They didn't even just draw a line. They drew the bumpy bits because I got them the sticks from the wood pile. And I realised that innovation comes when you have X amount of resource and you need to fix this problem, right? So the smaller amount of resource you have to really be inventive if you need to solve this problem. So that and a whole lot of other things stuck with me when I was in this poor village, and I'd taken 4 uni students over there on an education practicum experience. And so on my reflections of that, I thought often in education, everyone thinks that this $30,000 robot will teach robotics, or you have to buy this thing to make this thing happen. So what I look at and I think, well, what do I want to make happen? And what do I have around me that I can make happen that's not the $30,000 robot? Because there are many schools that can't afford that. And then they have the excuse of, oh, we can't teach that because we don't have that $30,000 robot. But what if we gave them something else that they could use to teach that that's not the $30,000 robot? What if it came from the $2 shop? What if it came from the clearance sale at Kmart? What if it came from the supermarket and not the expensive education store? What if we could create these things? That means every kid gets to do it. Every kid gets to have that thing. So it's not 5 students looking and 1 student doing. You actually have 6 students doing in a group. So everything that I do, I look at it and I think, who's the one interacting? It's like an interactive whiteboard. The only person interacting is the person out the front. Everyone else is looking. So if we can provide the opportunity at a good price point, it means that then we can provide plenty of opportunities. So looking at what we've got, what's applicable, how we can use that to get to the outcomes that we need to get to make our kids the greatest they can be. And it's not the next astronaut, but it's the next innovative, problem-solving, creative thinking student. And fingers crossed, they go to the space industry, and then the space industry really benefits from this kind of thinking. Because if we do go to other places and we do go to other planets, there's just going to be that finite amount of resource. You can't just ring up the plumber and fix the plumbing, okay? So same in schools. They have X amount of budget, X amount of resource, but how can we make that maximise that for everyone? So we do a lot of work in regional, rural and remote communities to provide the opportunities that they feel like the city kids are getting, but those kids don't. So last year we brought out 7 NASA JPL scientists and engineers and we negotiated with the Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, and we were given a Hercules aircraft for 3 days. So we flew out of where I live, 9 minutes from here, from the Air Force Base to the Air Force Base in Darwin, and then we went out into Arnhem Land with these people, and we chartered a plane, a 4-seater aircraft, and we sent 2 of them into a place called Maningreta, and they stayed there for overnight and met all the kids and talked to the community. So when we do outreach, our outreach is to everyone. So that's why we want the Basil and the Wattle out there. That's why we want people to say, I work in this community, I'm stuck, how can you help me? Because we're a little enough company that we can be flexible and agile, and we can just go, right, that's a problem they need solving, how can we help them solve that? Because we're all in it together.
Exactly. And that's really fascinating to hear as well. And I can just imagine your neighbors with the Hercules coming in.
The Hercules aircraft was funny. My husband's background is Air Force, and he said, never in 50 years of my career have I ever heard that this has ever happened. And I was the one who negotiated it because we're a not-for-profit. And so working with the Indigenous communities and stuff. So it was quite weird to be on my own aircraft, being the client. And you got to remember, my background's primary school teaching, so I'm up in the cockpit as we take off on the plane. And the cargo is 7 NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory experts and a Mars rover in the cargo hold, and off we went. So that's going to be a memory that no one will ever forget, because one of the people on board that flight, her name is Sue Finley, and she's now 83, and she's worked for NASA JPL for 63 years. So she was employed as a computer, like in Hidden Figures, but for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So she'd never been on tour, so we took her to Arnhem Land. So those kids met someone who truly, before the IBM computer, is involved in the space sector, and she talked to them, and they were just honoured that she was in their school. They were getting her to sign their school shirts, and she's going, why do they want an old lady's signature? So to share that time with people, and that goes back to that conversation about sometimes it's just the conversation or the person that ignites the flame. And we have to remember that it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah, and I think as well, people in space forget after a while until they encounter and realize, oh wow, like that kid's not just being polite, they're genuinely thrilled. That's so cool, I was able to do that. And I think people just forget, so it's always a pleasant sort of memory refresh for these professionals in space going, oh, what did you ask me in here for again? And oh wow.
Yeah, because really it truly is like on your shoulders we stand. Like there's people in the space sector here in Australia like Kerry Doherty, Stephen Freeland, like those people, I admire them, but they were before me. So we're all moving in that way. I have so much respect for those people because they've stuck at it for how many years while we haven't had a space agency, while everyone else thought they were crazy. You know, you just band together with the other crazies and try and hold each other's hands and move along. But we're creating the next lot. And that's how our student ambassador program got started, was finding that we had students who from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, from fighting at school, self-harming, attempted suicide, anorexia, you name it, because they felt like they didn't fit. And now they feel like they've got family, and now they're becoming leaders in their youth age group, and being seen as leaders in the teenagers. So we're creating leaders from them. And that whole program just spun out of meeting up with kids who wanted to come away. And then the one thing they all have is compassion for each other. And that's the really, really important thing in that group, that they all help each other. And they're across Australia, that group. And I'm very, very proud of who they've become and who they will become in the future.
I think it's also a great thing that you did bring up that impact outside of just, we're not only introducing students to education, we're really making their day or maybe making a difference in their lives that is just not something that we were planning to do when we walked out the door in the morning, but we were all the more happier to do it. And I think that's actually going to tie very well into a curiosity. What motivated you to start other programs outside of One Giant Leap Australia, like Gadget Girls?
It's not really outside. Anyone who knows, my ultimate aim is I want to build a home, not use my own home. So I've had 19 teenagers live at my house for a week, and we've done everything from drone, because we do drones and we run our own model aircraft field. We've had submarines in our swimming pool, hovercrafts over that, drone flying, remote control plane flying, astronauts Skyping in on the home TV. So anyone who knows the big picture of we want to build a facility, then you'll understand that all the programs fall in under that facility. So the Gadget Girls spun out of the Student Ambassador program. So some of the girls in the Student Ambassador program, they wanted to pay it forward. They really felt like there'd been such a change in their lives. One of them was going to quit school last year, and she graduated at the end of last year. So she was going to quit, not last year, the year before, and she'd filled in all the paperwork to quit school, and then she came away with us. And then she decided that after meeting up with one of our friends, Tom Nolan, he told her that he believed in her. And that whole conversation then flipped her on her head. And then she went, okay, right, I'm going to stick at school and I'm going to actually graduate because someone believes in me. If they believe in me, I have to start believing in me. So she's amazing. She's came to me and she said, look, it's made such a difference to me. Can I try and expand for the girls? And I want to create something. So we created a group called the Gadget Girls, and they're a group of 8 girls who signed up to do the Kibo Robot Programming Challenge with no programming experience at all. None of them knew anything about programming, but they said, we don't want to win. We just want to show that you can try things and it doesn't matter that you don't win. So they battled their way through some really heavy Java programming lessons for a couple of days here. They lived here with us. We gave them as much information as we could. They didn't finish, but they feel so proud that they got together as a group and tried that that's the philosophy of it. So the Gadget Girls have now started a drone group, and they'll be they've all been learning drone flying, so we've been running some drone academies here. And the Gadget Girls drone group is not a racing group. They just want to be able to fly drones and get through an obstacle course and get to the end and hold hands and go, we did it together. So it's not about a race. It's about skill set, learning skills, and then joining up as a group to just go, let's do that. So Gadget Girls will have many different groups in it, depending what their interests are, and they can flip in and out of them. So Gadget Girls is primary school, high school, university and industry, and it's free. We have currently 16 women who want to talk to everybody, anything from planetary protection to paleontology and archaeology. So now the guys are complaining at me that they want the Gadget Guys because the girls are having too much fun. So who knows where all that's going to go. But being agile and flexible and being my own boss means that I can just make these decisions and go, this sounds like fun, let's try this. And, you know, as long as we can put bread on the table and we're not starving, life's good, you know. So we've gone a bit better than 12,000. So, but we haven't, then COVID hit. So let's just say our revenue's not exactly extremely good, but everyone's in the same boat. So we're not going to stop anytime soon.
I think that's actually dovetailing perfectly into this next question, because I do know that with COVID, right, everybody's been hit. And particularly when we're talking about these programs and people are asking, what can we do in the space community to inspire the next generation of space? You've listed some ways you can do that through your STEM outreach. So is the answer to put more funding into these programs?
I think there's funding that's needed, but you have to be very discerning on what it is that you're going to fund, you know. So you can throw money at it, like you can throw millions, but is it really going to make a difference? Or do you just target things and know it's going to make a difference? So currently, I've had an offer to put a payload in space, a 1 kilo payload. So currently I'm working on kids designing their own postcard. We put a stamp on it. We charge, I don't know, $2 or something for the whole thing. They design their own message to themselves. We send it to space. If it survives launch and comes back, they've now got space-flown heritage that they can keep and show their kids and go, when I was at school, we sent stuff to space. What are you going to do? And so that kind of thing, small amount of money, but it's something that's priceless to anyone if we can make it happen, right? So as long as the rocket doesn't blow up on the launch pad, we'll be fine. But if it does, it's just the nature of space, right? So I just think we can throw a lot of money at it, but a lot of the things we do, it's not costing a lot. We just collaborate, lots of collaboration, lots of sharing of ideas. But I just think globally we all just work together, provide opportunities for each other, and then everyone benefits, everybody, not just a small number of people.
And yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. And I think actually I'm going to now ask one of the questions in the Q&A, because I think that, you know, recognizing that these programs are here and that essentially not everything, you know, we're not always running around as STEM outreach people saying, please give us money. You know, sometimes it's, do you have an hour? Do you want to come talk with students? There's all different ways to help. And also, we've got a question here from Yvette. Working with outreach efforts focusing on underrepresented communities, how can outreach initiatives bridge space opportunities and continue to include Indigenous communities? Because I think we've covered a lot of, but especially to our Indigenous groups, how can we continue reaching out?
And so we went to Dubbo for 6 days, made sure that we worked with a variety of groups, not just one particular type of group. Arnhem Land was the same. The Waddle program, I've had people offer to pay for a school to get a kit. So if the school said we'd love to apply, but the kit's $200, we can't afford it, I have a list of people prepared to just pay. So I solve that problem immediately and go, well, are you happy to be sponsored by this person or this company? And they go, sure. And so then that problem's solved instantly. So trying to have answers to solutions before they come up, or trying to predict what the problems could be and then having the answer to that is important. But also I think it's really important that the community comes on the journey. So when we went to Nhulunbuy, we ran a community forum, and we had the Mars rover, and we had community people there asking all sorts of questions, because as we know, Equatorial Launch is building their facility up there. So people had all these questions, but it was good not to be that company. We were a different lot of people, but we're answering questions that people wanted answered, but maybe weren't so trusting about the other people because it looks like they've got a self-interest. But we had no interest. We were just the space STEM people that arrived on the plane. So we could help answer some of the questions and bring that community on the journey. So I think you can't, sometimes people try to make people think that they can do something impossible, and the people walk away and go, that's never ever going to be possible for us. So we pride ourselves on trying to make the impossible possible. So you start with the possible, and soon you're doing the impossible, which is what a really close friend of mine, he would give a talk on that, and he would call it from Apollo to Artemis. And the sad thing is he passed away of brain cancer on New Year's Eve. So I have a GoFundMe page for him, because the talks that he gave in Nhulunbuy especially made the kids believe they can do anything. But we can't put the bar too high. So if we do that, they think that they're never going to be able to do it, and then you lose that credibility. So it's vitally important as teachers and as the space industry that we do bring the parents and the community on the journey, because we know if we lose the community, we lose that support. And once we lose that, it's too hard to come back from that space. So that's why One Giant Leap, why we involve parents, why we work in the community and not just schools. All the research being done says parents have a 54% influence on their child's subject choice in high school. So if we can't get the parents to see the vision, what hope have we got if the kid's got a dream and they're dependent on the parent for the vision? And that's where we fit. We try and pull all that together. Industry, government, parents, school, the whole ecosystem. It's really vitally important, especially from a young age. Yeah.
Indeed, especially from a young age. And however, there is a great question talking about the older participants of your program, particularly what can be done to engage older or retired people in space, and what kind of impacts have you observed from what you've already done?
I've got to say, Sue Finley, being 83 and still in the industry, she's working on the InSight mission. What a classic. You can't even dispute that, because she was there in real life. And I don't know, I think I read the other day that the oldest person to do space camp was 100. They had it on their bucket list to do. My husband's in his 70s, and he's an inspiration just on the things that he does with he's down there building a Mars rover at the moment with some NASA JPL buddies online. We work in a space where we have the remote control plane community out. The average age is 65. They're driving innovation in drones and remote control plane flying at these ages of 65 plus, because they're retired and they've got time, and they don't want to go and play lawn bowls, and they would prefer to hang out with people with similar interests. So our model aircraft field is a 7-day-a-week operation. So anyone in Sydney who's around, feel free to come and have a fly. I just think the mentality of you can do anything just because you're whatever age doesn't mean it can't stop you. The only person stopping you is you. The only person that stops you from doing anything is you. So if you have the mentality of I'm going to try this, like I don't know if I'll jump out of an aircraft with a parachute on my back, not really something that I can see myself doing. Other people can do that, and I admire that, but I'm sure other people think she's crazy, like she's been over doing this other stuff. And I just think, well, I don't even think twice about it. And I read something somewhere that if you don't know fear, you're not doing good things. If you're not scared about something that you're going to do, like I'm scared about the wattle thing. What if I don't grow a wattle tree? Wow, I'm going to be really scared about my wattle tree's growing capability, not my education stuff. But I need to be able to grow one so I can show that you can do it, you know. So it's that.
Yeah.
Just be brave. Take the leap.
Being brave, and like I think we've definitely reiterated a couple of times, start out small. Start small, do little, and then while it is a one giant leap of faith, you know, you've got to be step by step.
Yeah.
With that,
and be around people who encourage you to do it. Don't listen to the ones who go, oh, you're 85, you can't possibly do that.
Take with you.
Yeah. Don't listen.
Goodness, if you would listen to somebody that said you couldn't do it at the time when you started your one giant leap, that would definitely have been a shame. So we're really grateful that you didn't listen.
You got to remember, I did have plenty of people who said no. Plenty. Right? I had plenty of people who said, you're leaving a comfortable job for no income with a mortgage, you're not going to do it. In fact, I had someone say, what would you want to do that for? Who would want to do that? I went, me. I want to do that.
Well, thank you so much for those wise words, and thank you for joining us tonight, Jackie. That last question, now we must bring to a close the first episode of Space Café Australia. Our goal with this series is to continue to share these stories from Australian space, so we thank you for your support. We plan to continue these topics in future web talks and on our portal, SpaceWatch.Global. Tomorrow, the 14th of January, we have a new episode of Space Café's Black Ops by Ralph Thiel about quantum technologies in space. On the 19th of January, Torsten will host Elodie from ESA, apologies if I mispronounce that, on his 33-minute Space Café. And then a week later, on the same 33-minute format, on the 26th of January, he will host Dr. Peter Martinez of the Secure World Foundation. On the 26th of January, SpaceWatch.Global will be bringing you another web show out of Australia, Space Café Law Breakfast with Stephen Freeland. Fellow Aussie Stephen will chat with Torsten and two other guests to feature current real-world implications of space law. Topics featured will span all the way from chatting about the Hayabusa 2, landing in the outback, to the new Biden administration. It will be great fun to listen. I encourage you all to support another Australian starting an amazing initiative with SpaceWatch.Global. All events can be found on our website, SpaceWatch.Global.com, where you can also sign up for our daily or bi-weekly newsletters that can keep you up to date on events coming up. You can also follow us on Eventbrite, where the events will go live Wednesday. As always, we'd like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Let us know what you thought. If you'd like to treat yourselves with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Take your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global. The work we do is not possible without your support. Thanks again for joining us tonight.